All right, Joe, welcome into the very first episode of the Dodgers Brotherhood podcast on the Dodgers Brotherhood channel. My name is Ryan, here with my brother Matthew, and there's an incredibly small chance you may have seen us in the LA Sports Brotherhood channel where we've talked about just LA sports in general, but we wanted a place to specifically talk about the Dodgers because there's been so much going on, as we all know, and it just feels like we don't have enough time to talk about them just in our daily lives normally. So we want to make sure that we have this opportunity to talk with each other and with you guys about what's going on with the Dodgers. So yeah, we'll get into more logistics and everything later, but thank you so much for joining us. We have a nice little podcast here. We're going to have a bunch of different types of videos and analysis and stuff like that, especially as the season starts. We love doing breakdowns and stuff. So with that being said, Matthew, we are in the middle of I shouldn't say the middle because it feels like there's so many free agents still available that it feels like we're in the middle of free agency still. But the pitchers and catchers report for the Dodgers in like 2 weeks. So on the back end of what I would consider, and I guess we'll get into one of the future in these next little segments we have, what I would consider the best offseason, not just for the Dodgers, but like of any major league organization. We might want to expand it. I would contend in any American sport, this might be the best offseason ever. But, well, let's talk about the actual moves first before we start doing these crazy comparisons. I'm sure every Dodger fan knows, like, the basis, like, every one of, like, the smaller moves or whatever, just the names of them. But let's go ahead and ask this question. Were there any moves that, like, were genuinely surprising to you? And also, what is, like, your favorite thing that's happened so far?
The most surprising is kind of, I think, after the Sasaki signing, getting Scott for that price, because I thought they definitely did want Scott, but I didn't think they would go to that price to get him. And then, what was it, the next day to get Kirby Yates again? That was definitely the most shocking, to get those two relievers off of the Sasaki news when the whole league was already mad at us. Definitely really shocking. Sasaki obviously wasn't shocking. Snell was like the exact move that I wanted. Both of us said it on our channel. We want this to happen, and it happened like a week later. So my favorite, I feel like Sasaki's kind of cheating because it's just a gift to get him at that price. My favorite is definitely Blake Snell because he is exactly what the Dodgers needed. He was a lefty with incredible stuff, and every single year before, or the past 2 years before the postseason and the back end of the season, he became the best pitcher in the sport. But in those 2 years, he didn't pitch in the playoffs. So if he gets that hot again, leading into October, you give him the ball day one, I feel great about that. So 100% Snell, my favorite signing. Most shocking was Tanner Scott, which, I mean, every single move, there wasn't a single one where I was upset about. And that's kind of the offseason the Dodgers had for me.
Yeah, it was like if you wrote out your wish list and the exact haul they have, and by the way, it's still not done. Like if you look at 5 years from now, when you look at the actual list of the acquisitions, Clayton Kershaw's still going to be there. He's not an acquisition, but he's coming back to the team like they make this signing. I still believe Kike is going to be there, which is something we'll probably talk about in a little bit. But I think if like you told the most for like positive, always upbeat Dodger fan, like, oh, everything's gonna go right, and you said this is what we're gonna do, they'll even be like, I feel like that's a little too much. Like it's a little too much to expect. So I mean, truly, it is really crazy. Blake Snell is both my most surprising and my favorite because I really felt strongly that they were going to either keep guys like Flaherty or Bueller, and Sasaki was always going to be like a possibility regardless. But I was hoping that the starting pitcher move they made that was going to like make them commit real money was Blake Snell. He just fit everything the Dodgers do so perfectly, including not throwing a lot of innings as a starting pitcher. But he just is. We weren't missing, quote unquote, missing anything because we won the World Series. But an objective look at the roster was we needed a lefty and we needed a starting pitcher that could just dominate with strikeouts. Glasnow was that, but it's really tough to depend on him, unfortunately, even though I'm very excited to have him back too. But Blake Snell, just he's a type of arm we haven't had in so long. And it happened so early in the offseason that I feel like people are gonna get mad when they remember that he's on the team and he's like starting game one, he's starting a home opener or whatever. Is like people are gonna be like, oh my god, I actually forgot Blake Snell was there. Like I'm so excited for that.
Come to think about it, if you were to tell me like end of the season this November, I think it's really shocking that they spent that money on starting pitching, the top starting pitcher and the top reliever. So getting
Yeah,
Snell and Scott, I think that's probably the most shocking thing, because it's like you go into, okay, there's the number one prospect in the world, you have a chance at him. There's a starter you can get, and there's a reliever you can get. To get all three and bring back Teoscar, that's pretty crazy. I mean that's the kind of offseason where it just puts you into like historical off seasons. That's probably the craziest thing. That you got better at every single level after winning the World Series. And I mean, shout out to Friedman, because he is the best front office man in sports. Not American sports, the entire world. He's that good to me.
yeah. Go ahead and make that claim. Yeah, I Tanner Scott like should be surprising, and I was when I heard the initial interest. But from the first report of like, oh, Dodgers seriously interested in Tanner Scott to when he signed, it was enough time for me to like convince myself what was going to happen. Because objectively, if you told me the Dodgers were going to sign any type of reliever, no matter how good they are, for more than 2 years and more than certainly $50 million, I would have been like, I just would have shaken my head like, no, they're not going to do that. And the more smoke that came with Tanner Scott, I was like, it doesn't make sense to me. Player wise, absolutely doesn't. I'm super excited to have him. But Kenley Jansen's the only reliever they've given that type of contract to. And ironically, Joe Kelly is the only other reliever that's gotten more than 2 years on a single contract. So it just didn't seem like something the Dodgers would do. But then I think it just signals the like most clear and obvious sign of an investment into the team from the ownership, because not that we were ever questioning that, but like for Andrew Friedman, the king of the analytics, even though he's far beyond that in his understanding of baseball, but like he's the perfect example of a guy that never ever spends on bullpen, because you guys get guys like Anthony Banda and Evan Phillips, who the Dodgers got from DFA scrap pile, and they're like legitimately elite now. So the fact that he can do that, but then also like, okay, fine, I guess we'll spend on the best left-handed reliever in baseball. We'll take it. Like it's just like a new level of Dodgers domination that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, 100%. Here's a question I have. I think we have never seen a team this complete, and we're gonna get into where they rank historically. But this happens. Let's say we're not 100. You'll never be 100% healthy, but there's no major blows where this pitcher's out the rest of the year, hitter's out the rest of the year, relievers out the rest of the year. You're relatively healthy. All the stars are there. Do you make a trade deadline move? Let's say we're like
Mm.
on pace to win 110 games. I don't know what you fill in, because the thing is the lineup we already know is it's rock solid. The rotation has, we'll get into it more later. To me, it's the best stuff I've ever seen in my life. And the bullpen, what's crazy about the bullpen is you have three, I like to call them dudes, like guys, high leverage arms. I think you got three lefties and five righties, which sounds crazy. And you have the potential for potentially Edgardo and
Mm.
Dustin May. So you got the eight guys, and you got potential for a few more. Plus, not to mention a veteran like Brazier. Maybe Kasparis could do something. So I mean, you could go 10 deep with the bullpen, and that's, I don't know. Is that the weakest part? It's like I don't know where you kind of attack for a trade deadline. For me, I think it's either if you have an injury, you obviously got to replace that, or if someone like falls off a cliff, maybe Teoscar has the worst year of his career. But if they're healthy and they're all performing, I don't. Do you even make a trade deadline move?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that was another big storyline as to why Scott and again Kirby Yates is kind of like, I'm expecting it to happen, but Bob Nightingale's the only person that said that this deal is done, and that was like a week ago now. So I don't know. Not however that happens, but the pursuit of those two guys at least signals that Friedman, when he sounded like he was kind of joking, but also seemed very serious, about how he hates making trades at the deadline because of how high the prices get relative to the actual value. It really seems like they like legitimately went into this offseason with that being a priority of just like, we're not trading. We're not dealing with that again. Because Jack Flaherty, worth it 100 times out of 10, that trade. They do it every single time it's available to you. But they did lose like just like relative value to what he probably would have been in the beginning of the offseason. Granted, he was a 1-year deal, but just like that quality of pitcher is not typically the guys you trade away. And it's every ownership group should learn from this. Is like Kirby Yates was available to every single team. He's a 36-year-old reliever that's probably just looking for a 1-year deal that can get him a little bit of money. And he was available until the middle of January. So I guess teams are more content making trades in July. Friedman really planted his flag. We are not going to do that unless we absolutely have to, which I guess is the actual answer to your question from my end, at least. Is like, you're just going to address injuries. If that happened, you have to address it. I think if there is a place, well, I don't think this will come to fruition, but if is a place where I can see them needing to address just a non-injury related weakness, it is the outfield. If they're truly refusing to move Mookie into outfield anymore, and he's going to stay in the infield regardless, if like Edman has to shift back to short because Mookie's maybe struggling or just second base is better for him, then you're kind of lacking a little bit. Well, you're lacking relative to the greatest team of all time standard that we have now. So maybe they go somewhere there, but truly, I don't think there's going to be a move.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, if you're that good, which I mean, it would take crazy injuries to like make it so where you have a hole. Why waste prospects? Just hold on to the capital you can. Trade for the next all-star next offseason.
Yeah, exactly. So with this talk of all-stars and trades and acquisitions, I wanted to look at the greatest teams in Dodger history by record specifically. We can go, I think eventually we'll expand this all time, especially if the Dodgers kind of show to be on that type of winning pace during the season. But I don't think there's going to be any new like surprise names popping up. Like Kike and Kershaw, I do expect back. But that's not going to, I wouldn't think that would change much about the regular season win totals. Because I still like regular season wins don't mean anything in the grand scheme of ultimate success, but it's still really cool to see a team win a bunch of games. Like, I don't want to lose sight of that. So three teams, the three best records in the history of Dodger baseball, regardless of what city they were played in, happened in the last 4, 5, 6 years. 2019, 6 years. 2012, a team we remember very well, 111 wins. I'm almost positive that's the only 110 plus win team in baseball since the Mariners. Pretty sure since the Mariners regular season win. So. Yeah. We know how that they lost to the Padres and then LDS. Well, actually, I'm not even gonna bring up playoffs because none of these teams actually won anything. 2019, 106. 2021, 106. So let's start with those three. Obviously, we'll keep going down. To refresh some memories, the rosters, I'm sure most people remember, but like 2022, that was the first year post Corey Seager, right?
Yeah. That was
like Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, Mook, JT was still here. Like, I mean, we remember these guys. 111 wins. Honestly, thinking about it, like looking at the roster, it was obviously incredible. It just felt like that wasn't a team that was supposed to be that close to breaking the record. It just never felt as fully dominant. Maybe just because the names, like we had Heaney and Tyler Anderson, who were incredible for what they were doing, but it just felt a little off, if that makes sense, relative to how much success they had.
Yeah, I always felt that way about that, about this team. It was weird. Like, I mean, the thing I can say is I think they were the most regular season built team because they stayed completely healthy.
Yeah.
And you're going into a playoff series, that lineup isn't like really what you'd want, but you think about like Trace Thompson had all-star numbers. It was just that kind of thing where like everyone who played at a high level, even if they weren't like someone you'd want in the box in a tie game in the NLDS. Like Trace Thompson is not that guy.
Yeah.
So it was like regular season. So if you're playing the Rockies or whoever was bad that year, Trace Thompson's going yard on the hanging curve. And like you said, Heaney, I don't know if you want him starting a playoff game, but he had a great year that year, a 3.10 ERA. Tyler Anderson, you did want in a playoff game because he shoved against the Padres.
Yeah.
But kind of that same thing. Unfortunately, UDS was very good. Gonsolin. It's like, again, you look at the numbers on Baseball Reference, a lot of great numbers. You look at the pitching. I mean, my goodness, everyone had under like a 3. Heaney was the highest with a 3.10 ERA, so that's why you won 111 games. But again, do you really want Heaney or Gonsolin or a hurt Kershaw starting those games? No, and that's why you eventually lost. So I mean, it's just in terms of like stacking rosters, it wasn't the biggest names, but just everyone was productive, everyone was healthy, and I think that's why you got to that win total. I mean, if you go, I'm sure we're going there next. If you go to like a 2021, 2020, 2019, if those teams stayed healthy, they'd probably win more, but didn't end up that way.
Yeah, as you bring those up, we can move on to those because I do agree. Like, it's a very interesting thing to talk about names and the cachet they hold when you have material stats in front of you, like how they actually performed. But there is something to, again, not despairing Tyler Anderson because I legitimately loved him. I think all Dodgers fans did. He had such an unbelievable career and also played well in the playoffs. So it's not about him specifically. It's just like there's like if you have Mookie Betts putting up a 900 OPS and you have Mike Brasso platooning putting up a 900 OPS, like it's just different. Like you could put all of the stats up against each other and they could look exactly the same. But if one's a superstar doing it that has like legitimate weight in the league and another guy's an unheralded guy, like the name's not really there, I don't know. Maybe it's superficial to me, but it genuinely does feel different if it's like a big name guy. Like it just feels like there's more impact. But that being said, 2019 and 2021, both 106 wins. The other two, the second and third, I guess tied for second best records in Dodger history. And I do agree with you. I think I want to start with 2021 because I think we've talked about it before. Up until last year, 2024 last year, I really thought that the 2021 roster post trade deadline was the best team that I've seen, like with my own two eyes. Like it truly, like that's one where if they ended up, winning 113 games, like if they stayed together, that would not surprise me one bit. Like that team was so good.
Yeah, that's the one I always, and I honestly I think it finally got dethroned this year. Fully healthy, by far the best team like the Dodgers have ever had. I was always dying on that hill, even when we won 111 games, and it officially got dethroned. I mean, there's no way it compares to this current team, but like it's one of those where you go back and you think, like, my God, I mean, what was Justin Turner hitting fifth? You had Seager, you had Turner, both Turners, a prime Muncy, who's like one of the best hitters in the sport. Will Smith was the best catcher in the league at the time. Mookie Betts was Mookie Betts, who was a top 3 player. Pollock had an 892 OPS, which I always go back to and think, like, how did that happen? I mean, the only weak spot in the lineup was Bellinger, who's one of the best fielders in the league. And not to mention, Chris Taylor was an all-star that year. So you could have started him over Bellinger with a 782 OPS. I mean, the team was freaking loaded. Pujols was a good bench bat as a righty because he was actually very good against hitting lefties. And it was just, from top to bottom, that lineup was ridiculous with names. I mean, you're going to look back in 10 years, see Seager, the 2-time World Series MVP, Will Smith, Trey Turner. It was just a crazy stack lineup. And then post trade deadline, like you said, they had the 3-headed monster of Scherzer, UDS, and Buehler, which is, I mean, I hate 2 of those guys now, but they were really good at the time. I mean, that was Buehler's best year ever with obviously with the Dodgers in his career. He was like legit. I think, he finished 4th in Cy Young.
Yeah.
Scherzer finished 3rd in Cy Young, and UDS finished 7. So that's 3 of the 8 best pitchers in the National League. Not to mention Kershaw, if he would have been healthy, would have been there. And then the bullpen was there. Blake Tryon was amazing. That was when Phil Bickford was having his good half a year. That was the one Joe Kelly year. Man, that team was so stacked. I think, like I said, because they got the injury bug, maybe more than any other Dodger team. Maybe this year was worse, and they won 106 games. I mean, and I vividly remember like there were so many stupid games where we should have won and we end up losing by like a run. If a few injuries don't happen, a few of those games don't go the other way, they easily win like 113 games. So, in my opinion, up until this point, this was the best roster, fully healthy, the Dodgers have ever had.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to disagree. And Walker Buehler, 33 games started, 200 innings, 171 ERA plus, led the entire league. Kershaw, when he was like, Kershaw had his worst year, and it was a 3.5 with 20 more strikeouts than innings pitched. Scherzer came in and unfortunately was absolutely incredible. I only say unfortunately because I think actually this is a sentiment shared a lot among a lot of Dodger fans now. Most people don't like him because we feel that he's at least played a big part in Walker Buehler's repeated injuries, which very frustrating. But yeah, this is such a Kenley Jansen's last year with the team, and he was legitimately elite all year and in the playoffs. Which, as we get to talk to you guys about the Dodgers more, you'll find that I absolutely love Kenley Jansen, and the hate that he got towards the end of his career with the Dodgers was legitimately upsetting me. Like this team was just good. This team was just so good. And while the 2024 team had more, the number of injuries was greater. Actually, because never mind. I was gonna say the Max Muncy and Kershaw injuries happening like basically back to back weeks, right at the end of the season. Max Muncy literally getting hurt in the last game of the year. That felt like it was more impactful than any injury the Dodgers had this season. But I mean, Gavin Stone had a massive surgery like a month before the season ended. We found out Glasnow was out. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
That is an interesting discussion. That Muncy injury will forever be like the worst. It was to the point where like when Freddie rolled his ankle, I legit got PTSD of like right before the playoff push, the first base. That one,
seriously,
that one was tough.
Yeah, but 2021, you can tell we both really loved that team. I mean, we always love the Dodgers, but 21, like, I had no doubt in my mind if Max Muncy and Clayton Kershaw were healthy. Not like even the 3.55 ERA version of Kershaw, they would have won the World Series.
2021 was also the only year we lost, and I was like, I'm proud of these guys because they beat the Giants. Beating the Giants, that felt like winning the World Series. I mean, that was awesome, winning that Game 5. And then it's like you won the year before, you're battling these injuries, you lose in the NLCS after beating your rival. Like, it's a respectable run. It's just injuries got to us. I mean, that's the way I look at that season. It wasn't a choke job.
Yeah, and I do agree.
Where you want to move to 2019, that was also
2019. Yeah, 2019 for being 106 wins with the MVP of the league on the team. Gotta be honest, I do feel a little differently, but I'll let you go ahead first.
The way I look at this team is just lefties. I mean, Jock leading off against a righty, he was amazing that year. Bellinger was MVP, Seager and Muncy. I mean, those are 4 freaking killer lefties. I mean, insane lefties. But yeah, it wasn't too the level. There was also maybe the worst bullpen we've ever had.
Yeah.
Which
2018,
really
but yeah, I would say 2018.
Oh yeah, 2018. I don't look
one
at
of the really good teams.
Like I don't look at 2018 the same caliber as like the 2018. I'd still above 2023, but I don't know. It's not to the level, which is funny because they made the World Series. But yeah, they had the 3-headed monster of Ryu, Buehler, and Kershaw. I remember that was the year of the trios because the Astros had a good trio as well with Cole and Verlander and Greinke. The Nats obviously won with that big trio. So yeah, it was a good rotation, but the bullpen wasn't good, and then the lineup was solid as well. I think doesn't stack up to 2019, or excuse me, it doesn't stack up to 2021 or 2024 for me.
Yeah,
and if we're being honest, maybe not even 2017. And I don't know if we're gonna get into the 2020 team because they actually had the highest win percentage, but obviously the season cut it short. Yeah, this team had a lot of good memories. I mean, remember they had a lot of walk-offs, but it's not underwhelming because this would be like the best team another organization's ever had. But I'd look at it as like a pretty solid team.
Yeah, I think again we talk about the names and the types of the way success is had. I love Hyunjin Ryu so much, but a soft tossing lefty who never had a bunch of like real success in the playoffs with like doesn't punch a lot of people out. He was elite, like otherworldly elite in 2019. But it just never felt like we can dominate a series with him pitching as like the lead guy, just because of the nature of the way he throws. But like Walker Buehler came into his own that year. I mean, we already knew what he was going to be, but it was classic Walker. The bullpen was definitely the biggest weakness. I also think that the trade deadline, we talk about not wanting to trade. I think the value that Friedman was looking at was just too high for them to make a move, because I don't know if you remember, but Jed Yorko, I'm almost positive, was the only trade. Jed Yorko and Adam Kolarek, which ironically, Kolarek was a great move. If Roberts would have just used him the way he should have been, probably would have won that series. But yeah, like you look at the Astros trading for Zach Greinke, and then we trade for Adam Kolarek on the same day. It just didn't feel like the same thing.
Yeah, that was a really fun season. It's just I got left with such a bad taste in my mouth the way that NLDS went down. Obviously,
yeah,
it's just I don't know. I feel like it's a team I don't really look back on. And what's interesting, we're going through these teams, and when the theme was been when we lost both of them in the first round, 2022 and 2019, we said like these starters put up really good ERA, but it's not the kind of guy you want like starting the game at strikeout. And I think that kind of just speaks to how the playoffs work and why we lost those years. We look at, I mean, this year we have nothing but strikeouts, so I'm really glad how that's happened.
Yeah, the difference, like, yeah, exactly. Looking through these names, you really get a sense of how the front office just like recognized the changes they needed to make, and obviously they knew like striking out guys are better outs as pitchers than like getting ground outs, but it's very difficult to fully dive into that. But obviously there are now. So we actually have two very old teams, the 1953 Dodgers and the 1942 Dodgers. 42 is even beyond my comprehension, but 53 has a lot of names we know, so we'll look at that one. 105 wins. And okay, the next two, probably the last two. Actually, I want to do 2020 as well, because that's the other championship year we have. But for the elevated actual full win totals, 1953, they went 105 and 49, lost in the World Series to the Yankees. 2017, a team we all know, 104 and 58, and we know what happened in the playoffs there. So let's go to 1953 first. I'll read off these names for everybody because I don't have them on the screen, just for us to understand. Roy Campanella, Gil Hodges, Jim Gilliam, Pee Wee Reese, Billy Cox, Duke Snyder, Jackie Robinson, and Carl Furillo. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys getting MVP votes that year. It is a honest, like, obviously you hear these names, they're like legends. Like they almost don't exist, like mythical figures to the Dodgers, but looking at these numbers, you get it. 2 guys with 1,000 OPS with nearly with almost 162 games played. It's like legitimately just an incredible team.
Yeah, I mean that is great. It's always funny looking back. Like I mean, people still reference the 1927 Yankees. It's funny looking back and seeing all these crazy names. And I mean, the Dodgers are one of the most historical franchises in the sport, and it's when you look back at teams like this, I mean, you know why.
Yeah, it's just something else. Not obviously we don't have too much to say because we never saw them play, but I mean like the full 8-man lineup that all played over 100 games, every single one of them OPS plus over 100. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys over 140. Like it's legitimately just truly like as all-time as an all-time team can get. And it's just unfortunate they went to battle with the Yankees, but we made up for it. And then 2017, the team that we don't really. Obviously, I'm gonna bring up the players here, but it's difficult for me to think about it because I go through waves of like not being mad, and it's like, you know what, it happened, whatever. Obviously, I'm gonna hate the Astros forever, but it's like, what else am I gonna do? But then I think about how good that team was and how they dominated everything for the entire year and the playoffs for the first time in the Freeman era. They just truly walked through their competition, and then I get mad again. So I'll let you address it how you want to.
Yeah, we'll never forget 2017. That was the first. I'm 19, so I was pretty young. That was the first sports team I ever like loved with my whole heart. I remember when we lost in 2016. I remember you were really mad, and I was like,
Yeah.
dang, we lost. And I just fell in love with that team when they were like 50 games over 500. I think it was like 70 and 31. And it's just they. I mean, I love that team so much. When my you and my parents tell a story that I wanted to quit baseball when they lost because I mean, I love that team that much. And I mean, we win in 2024, and some of the first thing Dodger fans say is that was for 2017, or
Yeah.
even the 2017 was better. Like that's a team that Dodger fans will never let go of. And like for the new ones, maybe came over from Shohei, I don't think they'll ever understand like how much that team meant to us. It just felt like the year, like you know how the Cubs had 2016. It just felt like the year all along.
Yeah.
That was the year for the Dodgers because before that they kept losing, they kept losing. It was like okay, like this is it. This is our time to chance. It feels like the team, and I mean it was a good team. It really was. Seager, Bellinger, and Turner were like the trio because my God, Justin Turner was incredible that year. He had a
Yeah.
945 OPS. That's like Mookie Betts level. And then Bellinger obviously had his rookie of the year campaign. Seager was incredible as always. Chris Taylor was incredible. I mean, it's nostalgia bringing it back. Puig obviously you got to mention. Puig had a similar year to 2024 to Oscar Hernandez. I
Yeah.
think you could say looking at the numbers here. Teoscar's probably a little better. And then Jock, I don't know. Man, that was just fun. All I will say, the rotation doesn't look like you're looking at Glass now and Sasaki and all these guys. It was really good. That was when Kershaw was in his prime, 2-3 and the guy's unbelievable. Alex Wood had that all-star first half, and then you traded for Darvish, who
Yeah.
we know how the season ended, but at the time that was like a pretty big deal. Rich Hill, loved Rich Hill. Yeah, I don't know. I remember the Brandon Morrow had his nice run in the bullpen. It makes me sad. It makes me happy. This was the awesome team. But honestly, nostalgia aside, I don't think it stacks. I mean, it's incredible, but I think you look at the star talent, not quite there with 2021 or 2025. Obviously, I think. I After we go through 2020, I think I'll try to put them in tiers because I mean there's a lot of good freaking baseball teams. We really are blessed as Dodger fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as the more we talk about it, the overall message probably is that we should be very grateful that we were fans of an organization like this. But I mean, I do fully agree that just name for name, even honestly, like production for production, it's not like it wouldn't be one of the greatest teams of all time on paper. It's just like I think that's what made everything feel more special though. It was like a bunch of guys that you've known for a long time, you love them, and they've just like clicked. It has all felt like, oh wow. Like we went 43-7 in a 50 game stretch. It just felt like we were never gonna lose. And then we literally only lost for the entire month of like September, and everyone was freaking out. We lost 11 straight games. Us two were actually at the game where JD Martinez hit those 4 home runs. We were walking out of the stadium as he hit his 4th one. Like I mean, I remember that season so vividly. But yeah, it's just something different about it. And for people who may hear that and non-Dodger fans hear that and be like, "Oh, so what are you gonna think if this current team that's overpowered wins?" My answer is I'm gonna be otherworldly happy because I don't care how it happens. It's nice thinking about it in the past tense. So yeah, 2017 season, not much has to be said about what happened other than actually no. That's it. We know what it was, and that's what it was. But 2020, the only other modern time championship as the Dodgers we have, a team we all grown very fond of, obviously. But looking back on the roster, I do want to see. Actually, I was gonna say I want to see if it feels as good as it was, but honestly, it does. That team was
Yeah.
incredibly deep. Like even before I search up the official roster, like we had the Pollock and Jock Peterson platoon. Like, it was an incredibly deep team.
Yeah, it was incredible. This team was how you master the platoon. That's the way I kind of look at it. God, I love the roster construction because it was an elite. I mean, the best 1 through 6 in baseball. I mean, maybe even all time because it is incredible. You had Mookie Seager, and then I believe it was Justin Turner, and then Muncy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then who was fifth? There was a good righty. Oh, Smith. Smith had
was
a
very good
980
that year.
OPS that year. It was incredible. And then Bellinger was 6th. That was the front 6 who I don't know if Bellinger actually hit 6, but those were the 6 everyday starters. And like you said, the Jock Pollock platoon, you had Chris Taylor who was really good platooning. You had Kike was really good. It was just Edwin Rios had a power bat that year.
Yeah, he did.
That lineup was so deep because of the platoons, and you had a lot of guys who were like Bellinger. If you look back at the stats, you say Bellinger wasn't that good that year. Muncy wasn't that good that year. It was a 60-game season, and in the playoffs, Muncy was incredible.
Yeah.
Bellinger had the biggest hit of this Dodger era up until the Freeman Grand Slam. So it was big time clutch performers. Seager obviously went off. That's what put this team over the top, I think, because Mookie, all the stars hit. Mookie, Bellinger, Muncy, Seager, Kike, everyone. Smith had obviously the home run off the other Smith. Every single one of the stars contributed. The role players did as well with Jock, with Taylor. Even Barnes had a good World Series. Funny enough, I don't know. This team will forever be disrespected because when we look back, we think of 2017. We're now going to be looking at 2024. I don't want this team to be forgotten just because it was a 60-game season. It was legit incredible. Kershaw and Buehler were 2 of the best pitchers in the sport that year. So that was the power 2, and then again, I hate to keep saying his name, but UDS was huge that year. Obviously, he was a good starter. Yeah. And then we used him in the bullpen. It was kind of like a nice back and forth. And the other 2 young guys, Snell and May, who contributed. That was when Blake Trinan kind of took over. Kenley was obviously there. Brusdar, that was his first rookie year.
Yeah.
The bullpen wasn't as good as maybe what this one hopefully is going to be, but it had 3 to 4 really, really solid arms. But yeah, the lineup really took it over the top.
Yeah. Victor Gonzalez, great. Alex Wood, great in the pen. Brusdar was very solid. Pedro Baez, for as much as he's a joke, was good. Dustin May and his little stunts gave up some runs, but it was effective. Trinan has a high ERA, but was good when he was on. He gave up a couple bombs. And also, I'm talking every stat I'm mentioning is playoffs because it was the longest playoffs in the history of baseball, which is conveniently forgotten about when we're talking about how different that season was. It was by far the most games for a winning team to ever play. Regardless, Kershaw 2.93 ERA in 30 innings. He led the team in innings for the entire playoffs. Walker when it just I mean obviously we love to see him. It's a championship team. It just I don't know. It felt so nice. And
I have an exercise I want to play. I think.
Go ahead.
I think they became the best team in 2017. So it's 3, 6, 8 years since then. I think we were the best because the best team in baseball doesn't win the World Series every year. I think we were since 2017. We've been the best team in baseball 6 of the next 8 years. I think 2018 you weren't. The Red Sox were incredible. In 2023, that team was that. There's a reason we're not speaking about it.
Yeah.
The other 6 years, I genuinely think we're the best team in baseball. I mean, 2017 we should have. Not going to get into it. Basically, world champs. 2020 we did win it. 24 we also did win it. You know what? 2019 might be a stretch. 2019, I'll say 5 of the next 8 years because the Astros and Nats were really good that year.
Yeah.
That's an impressive record. And if I were to rank them this sounds crazy. Fully healthy, if everyone's healthy, if that's what we're looking at, just most talented roster. I think it goes, oh man, that's tough. Because fully healthy this year, we get Glass now. That bullpen was nasty. The lineup was nasty. I think it goes 2024, 2021, 2020. I think that's my top 3 there.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree.
I really contemplating putting 2021 over 2024 though.
Yeah, it just seems 24. I think it's. I don't know if you would agree.
I think Shohei, Mookie, Freddie puts it over the top for me because that trio was better than.
it just the 2024 for as much as people will actually I'm going to stop talking about what other people complain about because I never care. For as much as Dodger fans internally may think that it's like the most talented roster ever, which
Nah.
I don't know. I think you can at least make the argument if you assume health for everybody, like in a re-simulated season. The reason it felt so incredible to win, and it still does, it hasn't worn off for me, is not just because it's a win against the Yankees and you beat the Padres. Like, it's just we legitimately went through so much stuff, like injury wise. Like, it was crazy. Some of the lineups you post, you can like pull from major, major points of the season. It's like spring training fifth inning type lineups, and we're rolling with that for like weeks. So I don't know, like it's really funny having this like back and forth mentally about a team that didn't win the World Series and a team that low key dominated their way to the World Series despite having injuries. But I'm also kind of like I maybe I'm looking too fondly on 2021, but I genuinely think that might have been one of the better teams ever assembled. Just like
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it really
crazy
was.
how good they would have been.
Yeah, I mean, at every level, is one of the best lineups. Big four in the rotation with Kershaw, and then elite bullpen. I think what I will, I am a diehard Dodger fan, obviously Laker fan, USC Raider fan. There will never be a sports team I love more than 2024 because of the resilience and the injuries and the way they did it, beating the Padres, the way they did it, the walk-off grants. Like, there will never be a team I love more than that 2024 team because they weren't. If we if we go back to back, we win in another 3 years. We're looking back like we won four in a decade. It's just gonna be like, oh, they dominated maybe we dominate the next two that we win if we do win that.
Mm-hmm.
2024 was not. It was not. We were just that much better than the team than the rest of the league. It wasn't fun. No, we had unbelievable amount of injuries and the resilience they showed. That was an incredible team.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, realistically, the reason I'm like waffling back and forth is because I think the Dodgers have always had very productive lineups and starting rotations that defy all odds to be incredible. And 2024 rotations final numbers objectively were not great, but the
Yeah.
bullpen was legitimately like, especially at the end of the season towards when it needed to peak, it was like peaking like crazy. But 2021, like you said, it was stupid deep. Bruzdar was there, Trinan was there, Jansen was elite again, Joe Kelly was actually solid, Phil Bickford was good, David Price was actually very serviceable. Jimmy Nelson when he was pitching was good. Corey Knebel, I think we kind of forget when he was hurt and coming back. He was good in the playoffs. We had Tommy Canely there still, and he crapped himself in the playoffs. But like it was depth, man. We had boys. Or Canely might have been 20.
That
Yeah,
was the
you
most
never.
talented one. But
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about though transitioning to the off season.
Mm-hmm.
To think about how good we were 2017 to 2023 and to add that many guys in 2 years, it's really unbelievable.
Yeah, it is crazy just like looking at the teams like putting the rosters up against each other. Also, I want to recant when I said Canely felt stupid immediately because I remembered him pitching in the playoffs and crapping himself. But that was against the Padres in 22, so that's on me. Um, but yeah, so like you said, a little transition, and I'm glad we spent more time on the Dodger roster past discussion because I think it was really interesting. So we don't have to spend too much time as we're running this episode out. But like you mentioned, I found MLB posted a list, and on the heels of the Dodgers' massive spree of acquisitions this offseason, so they put together a list of like the biggest the quote unquote biggest free agent hauls. It's not necessarily dependent on like monetary value because the biggest is almost certainly last year when they got Shohei and Yamamoto and Teoscar and extend Glass now. But it's just like in terms of the amount of players and like potential for impact, both negative and positive. So I'll walk you through We obviously know the Dodgers this year. We know the Dodgers last year. Two of the better off seasons ever, I'll certainly say. Again, I think this current one by far the best. But like when you compare, and I think this is a good comparison in terms of money spent, the 2022-2023 Mets, you might not think about it because they weren't doing anything. They paid Brandon Nimmo 8 years, 162 mil. Edwin Diaz 5 years, 102 mil. They signed Verlander and Scherzer for combined like 60 mil, I think, something like that. Kodai Senga, who's good, but like 5 years, 75. Jose Quintana 2 years, 26. I don't know, like it's when you think about it.
Correa.
Yeah, they were going to sign Correa until the physical failed. Like that's a bunch of money committed for a team that stunk that offseason. Like they traded Verlander and Scherzer that year. And I mean, this isn't a talk crap segment, but like you think about the way like the Mets were the big bad spending wolf, and that's the offseason they got, and they spent more equal to or more money than the Dodgers have this offseason. Yeah, literally, I think they might have spent more money than the Dodgers this offseason with the bigger. At least it's comparable, and that's crazy thinking about the impact we're gonna get this offseason for us compared to what they got from those years. So just goes to show money cannot buy just can't guarantee success. It'll help for sure. But yeah, you got any Mets comments, Matt?
Yeah, I mean that was a bad offseason. I mean, it's just the way the Mets go. That offseason kind of proves you can't just spend money to win. You have to be smart about it. And they kind of didn't learn the lesson by giving. I mean, that Soto contract was ridiculous, but I'm not going to say it's bad because he won't be like Scherzer. Like he's one of the best hitters I've ever seen. So it'll be worth it in the sense that he's going to be really good. But I mean, that was a ridiculous overpay, and it kind of just seems that's the role the Mets are in. It's like I hate the Yankees, and I am really rich. I want to spend a lot of money, get the team better, but not necessarily. Like they're not smart with it. Is the way I'd say. I mean, how do you pay those two 40-year-old pitchers that much? That was absurd.
Yeah. To be fair to Cohen, he did like be completely cleaned house after that, and they signed Stearns from the Brewers, who is still like, I think what people don't understand when teams go for the small budget team GMs that have had success is that their brains are still hardwired to be small budget guys. So you got to convince them to take chances. Like the Orioles are going through that right now. Like they have a guy that's very smart when it comes to prospects, but he doesn't sign starting pitchers for more than like 2 years, and he's gonna miss on every single guy. Anyway, not that part of the show yet. You have the next one. I would argue 100% worth it. Corey Seager and Marcus Semien signing with the Rangers for over $500 million with John Gray in there too for 4 years, $56 million. Obviously, they would do that 100 times out of 10. Corey Seager is the lone Dodger guy that we've lost in this entire time that I feel legit like it hurts me to think that he's gone. He's been gone forever, and so he's doing his thing at this point. But I mean, I'm not going to change. I wouldn't change anything that happened to get to the point we are now. But it does still hurt a little bit seeing him gone. But yeah, they won a World Series a year after this offseason, so good for them.
Yeah, 100%. That's like I really appreciate the fact that they did that. They had money. They didn't say, we're not really. The rest of the roster's not there. Let's hold on to this money." No, they spent it, and it didn't work out the next year. But because you locked them up for so long, two guys that can get that hot and put together a season, they did it at the same time in 2023. They got hot in the playoffs and they won a World Series, and that's why you should spend money.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the more shining examples of the benefit of trying to improve your team. What a crazy concept. The next one, not nearly as successful. Red Sox, 2014-2015. Pablo Sandoval, 5 years, $95 million. Hanley Ramirez, 4 years, $88 million. I'm pretty sure Sandoval was cut like a year into this contract.
Shout out to Hanley though.
Yeah, I love Hanley. So Sandoval struggled 2015. missed 16 basically the entire year, struggled 17 and released. Hanley was good. I do remember Hanley being good for a little bit the first year when he left the Dodgers, but he just couldn't defend anything. The Yankees, another not great group of guys. Well, one of them was good. 2013, 2014, so in the middle of their weird lull. Masahiro Tanaka was good for them. 7 years, $155 million. Pretty expensive contract, but he was legitimately good. One of the bigger mistake contracts that you'll ask a Yankee fan about, Jacoby Ellsbury, 7 years, $153 million. Pretty sure he didn't show up in New York for the last 3 years of that contract. It's pretty crazy. And Brian McCann, 5 years, $85 million. Pretty crazy. Still no World Series off the back of this.
Man, it's crazy hearing these contracts now that just didn't turn out. And I mean, we really haven't had one like that.
Yeah.
In our current way we are right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This does kind of seem like maybe feels like an empty exercise, but we just love talking about baseball, so we're going to talk about it either way. But I think genuinely the biggest thing to take from this is that the Dodgers don't sign deals like this. They have guys that don't work out for sure, but they just don't. They've never committed money. Well, the Friedman era Dodgers, let me be clear about that, have never committed massive money like this to a guy that just won't pan out. There's no Pablo Sandoval's on this ledger. There's no next one. Albert Pujols, 10 years, $240 million. CJ Wilson, 5 years, $77.5 million. There's nothing like that. And I'm not gonna be mad at the Angels for signing Albert Pujols. I'm not stupid, but it's just damn. That's really the biggest thing.
Signing we ever had. Is it Pollock who had an 892 OPS?
Pollock was one. I think Pollock for the circumstances, because you lowballed Harper in a ridiculous way. So, and Pollock was the backup. He was good. I don't know.
Still really good. Yeah, you can't complain about that. Really good.
Yeah. Ironically, for the money based, money committed to position and production, Joe Kelly is one of them. I'm not gonna lie to you. Joe Kelly is one of the worst contracts that Friedman
contributed signed. in another way, being a fan favorite. Which
he has legacy there. Huh. There's the obvious trades, which I never count because you're trading a guy that's 17 that never. Yordan Alvarez never stepped foot in the state of California. He wasn't even in America when they traded him, so I don't want to hear anything about that anymore.
And then I don't really care about a 1 year Kimbrel trade. Oh, that wasn't even a signing, but it was a trade.
Yeah, that's the thing.
What? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Marlins signed Mark Burley. What the hell? Jose Reyes for 6 years, 106 in 2011. Damn, that's pretty big. I know Reyes was electric, but
when going down the list, I think the craziest thing to me is there is not even no one even comes close to having the two if you put together 2 straight off seasons, the 2024-2025 Dodgers. There's no one even remotely close.
Yeah,
for having back-to-back off seasons. I mean, it's not even. If we go down that list in 20 years, we might be naming 5 Hall of Famers. That's how good those off seasons were.
Yeah, I think that is that's really crazy. That's the biggest takeaway for me. It really is just different. Also, I just I was gonna wrap up, but I was looking 2004, 05 Mets that offseason. They signed Pedro Martinez 4 years, $53 million. And when I saw that number, I was like, oh, it's probably just back into the year. I know he retired late 2000s, so maybe he was just kind of bad. He was coming off of it was a tough launch pad year, because 2002, Pedro, I consider that stretch he had is probably the greatest pitcher the greatest pitcher of all time, I think, for sure. 2002, 2.26, 2003, 2.22 ERA. 2004 walk year, 3.90 ERA, tough. But the next year, back at a 2.82. It's so that launch year really cost him some money, looking at, because he's Pedro Martinez. It's crazy. I saw that, because right next to him, Carlos Beltran got 7 years, 119. Who he was younger, obviously, and in his prime, and he was elite. But it's seeing that number next to Pedro Martinez, like, God damn, they got a steal. Just for like it's crazy. But yeah, as we kind of roll into the wrap up here, not much more to say about the specific offseason. So what I will say is, if you stuck around through everything, it's almost an hour long podcast. Really appreciate you joining us. Like, this is going to be the first first video on this channel overall. We will have a weekly podcast. We're going to see how that goes during the season. We might add some more like additions to it. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff planned, like different games, drafts, and stuff besides the general Dodger talk, but also a lot of like more short form analysis based videos. Matthew and I love doing that type of stuff, like analysis, pitching analysis, hitting, like hot streak, like examining the reasons why stuff in baseball happens, because we just love the sport, truly. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Matt, do you have any final sign-offs on our first video on the channel?
No, I mean, looking at the greatest teams in Dodger history, looking at the greatest offseason in Dodger history, they just had the best back-to-back off seasons. They put together the most talented roster I think we've ever seen in the sport. So a lot of expectations. The next 5 years is just going to be a lot of fun to be a Dodger fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks so much for watching. Go Dodgers. We'll be back soon.